So AI is expected to replace 300 million jobs over the next several years. But what jobs are most at risk? Which roles are safest? How can we as men make sure that we're still able to provide for our families? Well, Microsoft just released a study of the 40 most safe jobs and the 40 most at risk jobs, and it's very fascinating. But the question that we ask ourselves is how the heck are you going to predict that? Well, what Microsoft did was they examined Bing searches over the past months, and they applied what they call is an AI applicability score. Now, what this score measures is whether a particular vocation can productively apply AI in its activities. And the score allows them to track the frontier of AI's relevancy to work. Now, what we're going to do today is we are going to look at some of the biggest winners and losers when it comes to this AI applicability score. And we're going to examine, what does that mean for you? You know, should you be terrified of your job? Should you start learning to be a welder? Well, maybe not necessarily. Not necessarily. And we're going to examine where the opportunities are, because again, guys, the goal of this channel is not necessarily just to doom and gloom you, but to look for the opportunities for us as men to remain relevant, to remain financially free, and to be respected in our families, homes, and communities. Very, very, very important in a world where AI is taking jobs. And now listen, I can't cover everything on this list. That would be a lot of jobs to cover. I'm going to cover the biggest ones in today's video. But if you want to see the entire list, you can go to aiupdate.ai. That's my newsletter. It's AI for Men. Go there, subscribe, and I'm sending out a daily newsletter for guys just like you so you can remain updated on what's happening in the world, because it's all happening very fast and it's all going to impact us in a major, major way. All right, so let's check it out here, and let's start with the safest jobs on the market, okay? These are the bottom 40 occupations with the lowest AI applicability score, according to Microsoft. So the first on this list that we're going to cover, and again, I'm only covering the jobs that have large employment. So for example, phlebotomists, there's 130,000 of them. Hazardous material removal workers, there's 50,000 of them. Helpers, painters, plasterers, there's 7,700 of them. So there's not as many of them. We're going to cover the big ones. So the first one here is a nursing assistant with over 1.35 million employed. And you can kind of see here that a nursing assistant, is very hands-on. There's a lot of human empathy. There's a lot of human-to-human contact required to do that. You can't, if you're in a medical facility, if you're in a hospital, you can't just ask ChatGPT to soothe you to sleep. Although, that being said, we did cover what Grok is doing. I'm going to share a link to that video here. And the Grok Annie is definitely going to be soothing many, many men to sleep. I encourage you to watch that video and don't succumb to the AI companion craze. At any rate, nursing assistants, they gave a very, very low AI applicability score. Tire repairers, changers, there's 100,000 of them. They think that they're safe. Helpers, production workers, highway maintenance workers, packaging and filling machine operators, tractor operators, maids, housekeepers, cleaners, water treatment plant servicers. So what you're actually seeing here is these are roles that are either A, very manually intensive. They require you to work with your hands, your feet, your body, or they are roles that require high levels of human empathy. Okay, high levels of human empathy. So if you're a face-to-face, if it requires a human smile, a human connection, these are gonna be safer in the short term. Now you may say, well, Mark, what about the robots? The robots are coming. Yeah, they're coming. Autonomous vehicles are coming, but how quickly are they gonna be here? It's hard to say. There's a lot of logistical issues, administrative issues, compliance issues. And again, I don't know how possible it will be for a human to feel that deeply connected to a robot. It will happen for sure, but it's hard to say how large of a scale that will be. I love watching these movies like Her, and there's a bunch of movies with robots, and I think it's fascinating, but is it going to play out that way? It's hard to predict. What I can predict is that a lot of jobs are going to be impacted very, very, very soon, and that's what we want to highlight here. So we covered what types of job roles are going to be safest according to Microsoft studies. Now let's look at which jobs are at the highest risk. Okay, and these are the jobs with the highest AI applicability score. And I'll just say off the top few here, although these are smaller roles. First on the list would be interpreters and translators. There's about 50,000 of them. Historians, 3,000. That's a tough one, man. Like, that's a tough one, historians, because you no longer have to remember all this stuff in your mind. AI, Google can help. Passenger attendants, 20,000. So those are the top three. Although, again, not huge employment. Now, here's where things get interesting, especially for all my guys out there. Sales reps, there's over 1.1 million, and this score is very high on the AI applicability score. Sales reps, and I can tell you, coming from a sales and marketing background, that this is a huge deal. There's so many different types of AI chatbots, AI phone dialers. You know, if you're an SDR, a lot of that SDR work is being outsourced to chatbots now. Now, and I think this is an interesting point and something that Microsoft they also kind of gave this disclaimer, oh, this is not the end all be all. You know, a lot of sales comes down to human connection, right? I like to do business with people that I like. But what I think is interesting here, because if you're a really good salesperson, if you really thrive on human connection, A, that's good. B, don't get a false sense of security as to how important you are. I think if we found something over the past several months with tech companies and companies laying off tens of thousands of employees, there's a lot of people that probably aren't as safe as they maybe thought they were. So A, don't get too comfortable. But B, I think what we want to be looking at is how can we leverage these tools to become more efficient? If the big value that we bring to our sales organization is that face-to-face, that hand-to-hand, that personal connection, well, how do we supplement that with AI tools, AI chatbots, AI voice dialers? And you might say, Mark, that's not my role, that's not my position, and that's fair, but you need to be thinking about this. And I think, again, if we look at the way that Microsoft is leveraging these searches, it's maybe not necessarily the salespeople that are putting these searches, but it's CEOs, it's sales teams leads, managers, marketers. And what these guys are going to be doing is saying, well, how do I lower the cost of my sales staff and instead replace them with voice phone dialers, appointment setters, N8N, AI agent automations. Okay, and I know for a fact this is happening. It's something that I'm talking about with clients, you know, because the reality is that the sales organization is a very expensive driver in the company. Salespeople are expensive, you know, and companies are looking at ways to trim costs. So sales reps. The other big one here, the next big one, this is huge, is customer service representatives. 2.8 million. 2.8 million. And I mean, you're already seeing this, and I think this is, again, another interesting place. You know, if you go to a website or a software and you try to get help for a problem that you have, almost assuredly, you're going to have to go through some sort of call bot or some sort of AI chatbot or some sort of phone. I mean, and it'll drive you nuts. I think that, you know, it's going to be important that these softwares get much better and the experiences get better. That's something that will drive a person kind of wild, is going through these customer service loops that never actually go anywhere. So, but these services are going to get better and better. I've gone through a few different programs that I think are excellent. But I think what's interesting, and this goes to both the sales and the customer service, and this will be, I think, a important thing to consider across all industries, is, well, in customer service specifically, there's 2.8 million spots now. But, and we're going to need some humans, because there's going to be a lot of people like me that say, talk to a human, right? But what if AI could serve a role of, let's say, 10%? Let's just say 10%, okay? Let's say AI can solve 10% of those bottom simple types of issues. Let's do simple chat automations or even voice, okay? Well, I mean, that's 280,000 jobs, okay? What if it's 20%? That's nearly 500,000 jobs. So you can start to see how the numbers get pretty crazy there. What if it's 50%? Well, that's 1.4 million jobs. And again, I think that these numbers are pretty realistic. Now, the flip side of this, especially for sales, is, well, with all these efficiency gains, companies will invest back into their programs, and it'll create this vast amount of wealth across the ecosystem. And yes, that's a possibility. But the reality is that's more, I think, of a long-term thing. Because in the short term, you've been, if you're in that 20% bracket, the 10% bracket, you're laid off and out of a job. Some other jobs that are on the line: ticket agents, travel clerks, over 120,000 of them, or 119,000 of them. Yeah, there's multiple. Delta's rolled this out. Multiple airlines have rolled this out, where you don't even speak to a ticket clerk. You just go up, check in on your electronic screen, and then you're booked for your flight. Same thing at Walmart. You go to Walmart, electronic screen, you're clicking in, you're doing your thing, you're good to go. So this next one I think is interesting. Hosts and hostesses. Over 400,000, there's 425,000 hosts and hostesses, and they rank quite highly on this AI applicability score. Now, I've always thought of hosts and hostesses as being a very personable, empathetic type of role. But maybe there's a different way of doing it. Maybe it's kind of, again, like going into McDonald's and you type in on your screen. Now, again, there's going to be certainly a need at high ticket, very upscale sorts of restaurants to have a beautiful hostess at the front. But maybe there's a lot of hosts and hostesses that aren't necessary. Like if you go to TGI Fridays, do you really need to see someone at front that says, "Hey, welcome to your table," or is it better just have a check-in system? A lot of, like, First Watch is one of my favorite restaurants, breakfast joint, and you can book a reservation on their app and check in essentially on their app. Now, they still have a hostess at the front. They have a couple hostesses but basically all they do is show you to your seat. So how do restaurants rethink that to lower their costs, to improve the customer experience? I still like, and maybe I'm old school, I'm 42, maybe I'm old school. I like walking in and having a smiling face saying, "Hi, welcome. Let me show you to your seat, blah, blah, blah. What's your name?" Maybe I'm old school. Maybe that'll go away. Public relations specialists. Public relations specialists. That's an interesting one. 275,000 of them. Very high in the AI applicability score. Don't have a ton of thoughts there other than I feel like PR agencies really don't know what the heck they're doing anymore. If you watch that Sydney Sweeney ad, people are freaking out about Sydney Sweeney and jeans. Like, really, guys? Is that the argument we're going to have? You guys are nuts, dude. You guys are nuts. Counter and rental clerks, 390,000. And again, that's just kind of like we talked about before. If you go up to a front desk at a ticketing booth, ticketing office, etc. Data scientists, 192,000. Personal financial advisors, 270,000. That to me is a really interesting one. There was a time in my life where I was considering going into that type of field. And again, I think in this realm, there is a lot of personal connection that's required in personal finance. If you're going to be managing someone's money, they're going to want to know that you're managing it well, you're managing it safely, you're being responsible. But that personal financial advisor is not going to need to spend as much time analyzing charts and reading through data. They can use AI to accelerate that. And I think that's a common theme when we start looking at these white-collar professional jobs, is how can I use AI to be better, faster, stronger at what I do across the board. It's an absolute must. Also on here we've got management analysts, market research analysts, both of which have over 800,000 jobs in the workforce. So again, these are the Microsoft's estimates of the highest at risk and the least at risk. That's not the way they put it, but I think that's the way to put it. And I think my takeaway from this is, if I'm in any of these job roles, I want to be looking at how I can do my job better, faster, stronger, how I can deploy AI agents, how can I have multiple computers working on multiple projects at the same time. That's something I'm working on, especially when it comes to this newsletter and some of my marketing clients, people I'm consulting for. These are things that we need to be thinking about now, guys, because when the pedal hits the metal, when it's time for companies to start hitting cuts, they're going to be looking at who are the most efficient people in our organizations. When you go to find a job or find a client, you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm AI powered. Well, they're going to say, well, what does that mean, Jim? Well, I use AI to do this, 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 and this. This one's doing research. This one's doing copywriting. This one is doing manual outreach, or this one's doing automated outreach. This is my voice bot. And they're going to be like, wow, this guy freaking gets it. And I think that's where we want to be when we're thinking about our place in the workforce. Okay, the alternative is you go into blue collar work. You can be working outside, working with your hands. I had a time in the AC field. I kept getting shocked. I was like, this is not for me. This is not for me. In fact, there was one time where I had to climb up a very tall building. It was at a car dealership to clean the coils on the roof. And my ladder wasn't tall enough. So I had to kind of really stretch and climb to get up there. I was like, this is way too dangerous. I'm going to fall someday. Someday I'm going to fall and I'm going to get really hurt. And I decided I'm going to go a different path. So, I mean, blue collar work is very important. It's going to be paying lots and lots of money, but it's not for everyone. It's not easy. You might call me soft, whatever. You know, that's going to be a tough thing to get into. What I think we can do is leverage these tools to be highly, highly efficient and effective. And that's where I'm at. And by the way, you don't have to take my word for it. In yesterday's video, we revealed and went through Meta's Q2 earnings report. And it is fascinating, the world that Zuckerberg is trying to put together. AI is all I can say. We go into all the details of what his vision is, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity for guys like you and me to really win in this type of world. So check out that video from yesterday. I'll see you there. In the meantime, have a great one. Peace.